YouTube, my fellow truckers worldwide. You already know who it is. It's your Royal, oft imitated, never duplicated, the one and only Enrique Prince, also known as Prince the Trucker. Listen, let me tell you something they don't teach you and can't teach you in trucking school. If you don't understand your value, this industry can and will use you. You're going to find yourself running a lot harder. You're going to find yourself sleeping less. And you're going to find yourself in a state where you're just overall complaining way more than is necessary. And it can and will leave you feeling stuck. Today, we're going to have a breakdown and real conversation on why knowing your value and performing at a high level is the real key to success in trucking. You dig? Prince the Trucker on YouTube. Let's talk about it. YouTube, once again, welcome back, Prince the Trucker, with another video drop for y'all to enjoy. Listen, before I go any further and into the topic at hand, I do want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the support that you guys show here on the channel. I do not take it for granted at all. We just hit 3,200 subscribers. We are still climbing on our way to 4K. And, we grow slowly but surely every single day. And that is because of y'all. That is because of your engagement with the videos. You dropping the comments, y'all hitting that hype button, y'all liking and just sharing your experiences and giving me your feedback. So I'm truly, truly grateful for that. And I want y'all to know this, you know what I'm saying? Don't leave here without hitting a like on this video. Hit that hype button so this information and this content can get out to other drivers within the algorithm. And again, if you want to be part of that 4K family and you are not subscribed here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. You dig? So with that being said, y'all know Prince the Trucker. My purpose here is to always try to offer motivation and inspiration for our situation when we're talking about the perspective of an over-the-road truck driver. Drivers in general, but specifically my over-the-road truck drivers, because that's what I am. You know what I mean? And either way, whatever lane you're in, the most important thing for us to understand as professional truckers is, in today's climate, especially if you are new to the game, you need to understand your value. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that in the sense of being arrogant. I'm saying that in the sense of really understanding that we have an important job to do, right? We've made content in the past about how trucking is important to the nation, the economy, and things of that nature. But people who are new to the industry focus on three main things, right? Which, it's obvious you should ask these questions. You should know these three things that we're going to discuss right now. And that is cents per mile. How many um, cents am I going to be paid per mile when I'm out there driving this big old 18 wheeler across the country? How many miles am I going to get? That's number two. Um, Potentially every week and every month, because that's going to help you determine the money that you bring home. And speaking of home, the third thing that we focus on is the home time. You know, how often am I going to be able to get back to my kingdom? So we have the cent per mile, the miles we're going to be running, and the home time. Those are the three main things that we focus on when we enter the industry. And I like to call that the price of admission, right? That's the price for playing this game, knowing those three things. But we're going to go a step further in understanding how valuable you are when it comes to gaining experience and, how important that is. Your value is just not in your cent per mile, the miles that you run, and your ability to go home. Your value that you establish within the industry is your reliability to a company, right? Your professionalism, your discipline, your safety record, right? And overall, your reputation. So the price of emission is different than adding value to yourself over time. So you want to become someone who is reliable. You always want to be professional. You always want to be and represent discipline. You want to have and maintain a good safety record. And you definitely want to hold your reputation within these trucker streets um, like it's the only thing that you have. In trucking, your reputation travels faster than your truck does. That's a fact. Like, we live in an era where there's all eyes on everything, and you never know who's watching, you know? So the way you carry yourself definitely, whether directly or indirectly, um, adds value to you in the steps that you take. Um, and also, you know, your dispatch, the people that you have a direct relationship with, they know from a logistical standpoint. I mean, y'all already know they got GPSs on damn near everything, cameras. They know where you're at, so they're keeping track of if you are delivering your loads on time. They're keeping track if you complain about things that you have control over. You know, they're keeping track of if you are the type of driver or person who can communicate clearly and come up with a solution opposed to being a problem. They're looking at if you can protect their equipment that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, not just from a hardware standpoint, but from an insurance standpoint. All of these things are what they're looking at to determine your value in the long run. Um, and let's just be honest, valuable drivers in their eyes, once you start um, highlighting these traits that we're talking about to a company who is there to make money and there to pay you, once they see that you're adding value to yourself in this way and you're getting the results of that, you start to get better loads, right? You start to see more consistency in each day, each week. You're not down so much at these truck stops waiting for a load. Um, they start to give you more respect as a grown man or a grown woman because they understand that they don't have to babysit you. You know exactly what you're doing. You know exactly how to execute it, and that's what they want. So ultimately, it gives you the respect um, and more leverage. More negotiating power when it comes down to having the meaningful conversations and whatever you're concerned about with your dispatch and company. All right, so now that we kind of just laid all of that out on the dinner table, I want to switch lanes and kind of just give a perspective and an opinion on why I personally think that a lot of drivers, whether they be new or ones with a little bit of experience, why do they end up stuck? How do they end up in this negative mindset and mind state of, trucking? And here's the uncomfortable truth. You know, a lot of drivers don't lack the opportunity to be great. When we all get out of CDO school and we join our first company, for the most part, there might be some situations where you just have a bad roll of the dice, you pick a bad company, and it is what it is. But for the most part, I'd say about 90% of individuals that have just gotten their CDL and joined their first outfit, we have the opportunity to prove um, not only to ourselves, but to the ones that give us the chance, what type of person are we? What type of driver are we looking to become later on in our career? And they're looking at these things early. The ones that I find that kind of get stuck in quicksand are the ones that actually just lack the performance. You know what I'm saying? They're thinking it's going to be one way, and when they get out here and see the realities of the road, they just are not able to get over that hump of what the job actually entails. Couple examples. Showing up late to deliveries and pickups. When you first start out, that might be a little forgiven in certain instances, right? Because you're acclimating to how much time it takes, your resting cycles and, traffic, weather, all of these things. They kind of expect that in the beginning. But when you kind of create a track record of just being late for the hell of it, that's very costly because from a logistics standpoint, it's just like a bill, right? That you get at your crib. If you don't pay your bill the day that it's due, what happens? Usually there's a late fee attached, right? And you end up paying more than what the initial amount was for the month. And it's no different in trucking. Um, so you're causing an inconvenience there. Um, that kind of ties into as you gain experience, right? Poor trip planning. When you're just taking your time and moseying around and not really being efficient with your time, that becomes noticeable to your company. You know what I'm saying? Just having a bad overall attitude with things that they're asking of you and things that you should be doing. Attitude is a big portion of how you carry yourself on a daily basis, not just in the truck, but outside of the truck. If you just have a bad attitude, it's going to show. You know, Another thing is just blaming dispatch. If you become one of those people that like to point fingers and blame and say that it's all dispatch's fault, and again, like I said, you're going to go to some places where overall dispatch just sucks. They're not cooperative. They don't give you the right information and it can throw you off. So that is a real thing. But I guess what I'm saying is being able to control what you can control. Because once you learn what is required of you, you start to get into a rhythm where um, dispatch can't blame you for the things that are going on. You know, um, for the higher ups that actually take time to look at the situation and they go over all the data, um, dispatch will be held accountable if they're not doing the right things to be beneficial. So, but if you're the type of person that's just your energy off the rip, you're blaming your dispatch, like you expect them to tell you every single thing, when to take a piss, when to go eat. I mean, it's just not the right mentality. And who wants to be around someone who just constantly blames others for their mishaps? And ultimately that goes into just being an emotional person, someone who isn't adding value, any logic, is looking for the easy way out um, of your situation. You know, let's be honest here. No one forced you to become a truck driver. So everything that comes with reading the room and knowing what you have to do, knowing the audience, you know, what potential stresses and scapegoats that dispatch tries to bring to you, learning how to work those situations to get the right outcome is part of the skill set. You know what I mean? Um, but all those things that we just named, lacking the performance overall is what gets people in trouble. And then those would be the same people that say, "Oh, trucking ain't worth it. Trucking doesn't pay a damn." Um, but that's not really the case. Their performance and the value that they bring to the table isn't paying well. You see what I'm saying? So always remember, y'all, in the trucking industry, it's not your effort that gets rewarded, it's the execution that does. All right. So ultimately, what are we saying? All right. Your performance and the way that you perform in your everyday life and within the company is your power, right? High value drivers, people that value themselves to a high regard and willing to perform, will move a lot differently than the average individual you see just driving a truck. These are facts. You know, the people that hold themselves to a high regard are going to pre trip their equipment when they get up in the morning. They're going to trip plan um, like a true strategist. You know what I'm saying? We're going to manage our clocks like the CEO of a company. We're taking our time seriously and finding out ways to be more efficient, not just for the company, but for ourselves throughout the day. Um, We know how to protect our lives, the lives of people around us, and the equipment. Um, Shutting down when it's unsafe, for an example, not pushing the extra mile for a temporary fix, protecting what's really important. Um, and ultimately, being confident and knowing your value and not speaking and communicating from a place of desperation or fear. That's very, very important. People that hold themselves to a high regard when it comes to trucking, like myself, and I'm sure many of you, we command that respect. We command that um, space on the floor to voice our opinion. And we don't do it through um, having a threatening demeanor. We do it through the consistency of our work and knowing that we are more valuable in the way that we operate than somebody who has disregarded all of the things that we've been talking about. That is the Prince the Trucker energy. That's what I represent every single day and I live it. That's why I like to get on the channel and express my experiences with you all because there's no way that I could tell you that this is effective if I haven't gone through it myself. I see examples of it every single day. Like I told you guys, working for a foreign company, they've asked me to do things, they've suggested for me to do things that I was uncomfortable with. And because of the cloth that I'm cut from, I'm still here. I'm still productive. I'm still getting my bacon at the end of the day. It's not a situation where they're like, oh, you don't want to do this. We're going to have you sitting down at the truck stop for 4 days, stopping my money because I wouldn't be here if that was the case. I've earned my respect. And when I speak, they listen. And, I want every trucker out there to know what that's like because if you don't establish it for yourself, you'll never know. And so many people go the opposite direction, and that causes them to have a negative um, outlook on trucking in the industry. And then that feeds into the minds of other people, and they say, "Well, it ain't worth it. Trucking don't pay." And nah, you need to make sure that if that's the truth, you're getting it from an individual that really puts in the work, that can really have that opinion and relay those facts to you from having that value within themselves. They're not just complaining because things aren't going their way. Uh, remember the Prince Trucker energy, we don't chase validation, right? When you perform at a high level, that is what makes you undeniable from the people around you and the company that you work for. You dig? So, yeah, y'all, just to kind of add the maraschino cherry to this Sunday, you feel me? Once you understand your value, you stop accepting the disrespect. You stop letting these companies pressure you into doing what benefits them and being inconsiderate of how it affects you. Um, and you stop settling for just average. Again, you're out here to build a better quality of life for you and your family, your loved ones. You're out here to provide a service that we risk our lives every single day to do. That is a safety sensitive job that is heavily regulated. Um, and again, it's a certain pride that comes with being a truck driver. You know, for the people that don't see it, if you're in this situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So once you understand your value and you start to develop um, that type of mindset for yourself, you don't accept these things. You don't accept the disrespect. You don't accept the pressure. And you don't settle for the average because you know what you bring to the table. And honestly, that's in pretty much all areas of life, right? And I'm going to drop a little gem on you. When your performance lines up with your self worth, that confidence changes your entire pathway in your career. You know what I'm saying? Your conversation is different with the people you come across. You know, you negotiate differently with your company when it's time to ask for a raise. You know, you carry yourself differently with the people, not just in the truck, but outside of the truck in your everyday life. When you go back to the neighborhood and you're dealing with people, you plan things differently within your life, because the reality is that is how we live our life. You know what I'm saying? Everything starts with our confidence, starts with being, you know, aware of our situation and not losing sight of understanding that we know we're valuable and we know that we're important. But how you treat yourself is how other people will treat you. So again, don't mistake what I'm saying for being arrogant and you know, having a sense of false pride when it comes to, you know, just being a truck driver. You know, you really have to become that overall as a person. You really have to take pride in what you do and be able to show the machine that I'm way more than just another number or another person in the seat. And I promise you, you know, people notice, whether they say it or not. You will find those little situations within your journey where it is confirmed. You know, people notice the way that you carry yourself, how you go about things, and conduct your business. All right, YouTube and my fellow truckers all over the world, what more can we say about the topic at hand? You know, what a great conversation. And in closing, you know, just remember to always know the importance of what you do. You know your value. You know, take this as an opportunity to develop not only in your character and who you are as a person, but in your opportunities to move forward within the industry. You know, time is one of the most valuable things that we have, and I just don't see being out here wasting it, um, you know, with all the negativity that's associated with trucking. Look, nobody forced us to be out here. This is something that we wanted to do, something that we wanted to be a part of. So if that is your mentality, you know, get out here, perform like you mean it, and earn it. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to crown you the GOAT. Nobody's going to take a crown off the shelf and deem you king or queen. This is a grown man, a grown woman territory, and you've got to act accordingly. You know what I'm saying? There's no handouts, no shortcuts, just doing what's required to get the result that you want. And it's really that simple, you know? So hope everybody stays safe. Stay blessed. Thank you for your support. Hey, don't forget to hit that like button if you resonated with the content. Hit that hype button so more drivers, more people on the YouTube space can get this type of info. And, you know, ultimately, if you want to help us get to the 4K and support the channel, hit that subscribe button with the notification bell turned on so you don't miss any time I drop when I do. Y'all already know. Starr the Imitator, never duplicated, the one and only Enrique Prince, also known as Prince the Trucker. We don't move average around here. You do understand that though, right? We'll catch y'all in the next video. Much love and respect. You dig?